You've probably spent a few minutes scrolling through endless listings, wondering if you're about to waste a few $100s on a dryer that sounds perfect on paper but never quite fits your shop's rhythm. The hesitation is real. You need dry, reliable air for paint booths or sandblasting, but you also don't want to end up with a unit that sits idle because it's too big, too complicated, or simply the wrong temperature range for your environment. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the problem the Quincy Refrigerated air dryer is trying to solve. When you run a compressor, especially in a workshop that does a lot of finishing work, moisture in the line is the silent enemy. Condensation can show up as water spots in a fresh coat of paint, cause rust on metal parts, or even damage sensitive equipment. The typical solution is a refrigerated dryer that cools the air, condenses the water, and then reheats it so the output stays dry even when the ambient temperature drops. Quincy's QRHT model takes that concept a step further with a high-temperature design, meaning it can keep the air above the dew point longer, which is a big plus if your shop gets chilly in the winter. So, does this unit actually deliver on that promise? In real-world setups I've seen, the QRHT's 25 CFM flow rate is enough to keep a 5-horsepower compressor feeding a paint line or a medium-sized sandblaster running smoothly. The key is the non-cycling nature. Unlike some dryers that turn on and off every few minutes, this one runs continuously as long as you have pressure. That steadiness translates into fewer temperature swings in the line, and for a painter that means a more consistent finish without the occasional wet spot that can happen when a dryer cycles off briefly. The control panel is intentionally straightforward. A single on-off switch, a pressure gauge, and a couple of indicator lights that tell you when the dryer is heating and when it's ready for service. There's no need to fiddle with menus or set temperature points. You just flip the switch and let it do its job. For a shop where the air system is one of many things you're juggling, that simplicity is a genuine time saver. Now, let's get into the practical strengths that matter after the box is opened. First, the high-temperature capability really shines when you're dealing with ambient temperatures below 40 F. In a cold garage, a standard refrigerated dryer can actually produce air that recondenses as soon as it leaves the unit, negating the whole point. The QRHT's internal heating keeps the output well above the dew point, so you can run a paint booth all winter without worrying about water droplets forming downstream. Second, the 25 CFM rating matches nicely with most medium-sized compressors you'll find in a DIY or small business shop. You won't be throttling your system, and you won't be paying for a larger flow that you never use. Third, the 1/2-inch CHNPT inlet/outlet is the industry standard, meaning you can bolt it directly onto existing lines with a simple wrench, no custom fittings required. On the flip side, there are a few trade-offs that become clear once you start measuring your actual needs. The dryer tops out at 175 PSIG, so if you run a high-pressure compressor that pushes beyond that, you'll have to install a pressure regulator before the dryer, which adds a bit of extra hardware and cost. Also, the 1/2-inch CH connection, while common, can be a bit tight if your current setup uses 3/8-inch CH tubing. You'll need an adapter, and that adds another potential leak point. The unit size is another consideration. It's a solid-state piece of equipment that sits on the floor and weighs close to 70 pounds. If you're working in a cramped corner or planning to move it around often, that weight could become a hassle. Who should press add to cart on this one? If you run a paint shop, a small auto body facility, or any operation where you need a steady stream of dry air for at least a few hours a day, the QRHT is a solid match. It's especially worth looking at if you already own a compressor in the 5 to 10 HP range that hits 150-170 PSIG, because the dryer slots in without needing a massive upgrade. It also makes sense for food processing or pharmaceutical environments where moisture control isn't just about finish quality but also about regulatory compliance. The consistent temperature helps keep the air within the required dew point limits. On the other hand, if you're a weekend hobbyist who only runs a compressor once a week to inflate tires or power a small nail gun, the QRHT is likely overkill. You'd be paying for a high-temperature system you never fully utilize, and a smaller, less expensive dryer or even a simple moisture trap would do the job just fine. Likewise, if your compressor tops out at 120 PSIG, you won't be able to take full advantage of the dryer's 175 PSIG rating, and you might be better off looking at a model that matches your lower pressure range.